Hey there, everybody. Okay, we are back, and today we are going to start a series of videos on international trade and the Silk Roads. I'm going to go a little bit further back from this time period to kind of give you the introduction to it and then run right through what we've got going on at this time period as well. I think you're going to find it very interesting, and I've talked about the Silk Roads on like every other presentation that I've done at this point, so now we're going to get a lot deeper into it, so let's get right to it. Okay, so these areas are going to develop, these areas, I mean the roads, if you will, are going to develop specifically in Eurasia, okay? Now, I have a climate type thing here of Asia, and this is important to understand because we talk about axes of trade. And when I talk about an axis, I'm talking about vertical or horizontal, okay? Trade goes better when it's horizontal because the fact of the matter is the most common thing that is traded are agricultural goods. And the whole idea is, if you can see here, you see polar, temperate, arid, tropical, Mediterranean mountains. You see everything kind of runs in bands. Yes, you get the arid stuff that jumps in there because that's deserts and whatnot, but everything kind of runs in bands. And so what's important about that is we can allow goods that, say, grow in this tropical band here can totally grow over here. And the goods that grow like over here can totally be grown over here. So we like to have that transfer, okay? And Eurasia really is one big continent. You know, Europe and Africa and Asia, they get to call themselves separate things. It's Afro-Eurasia is what it really is, okay? Outer Eurasia is warmer, it's well-watered, it's really good for agriculture. We have our ancient civilizations in China, Greece, the Middle East, and India, and they are all agriculturalists because it's really easy, per se, I can't farm, but to grow stuff there. The interior of Asia, this area here, is harsher and drier, but you have lots of grassland, so this is where we can get like the domestication of horses and other animals, and this is where we get our pastoralists from, okay? And so this is super great. Like, that's kind of the structure here. So we have our agriculturalists as one zone, pastoralists in another zone. Sometimes they're going to trade, sometimes they're going to raid, we'll see how it works out. So initially, it really does start with pastoralists trading, and over here I have a Eurasian steppe pastoralist on the left there. They do trade and raid the settled societies. Specifically, what are we trading? We're trading things like hides, furs, livestock, wool, sometimes amber, but this also allows us to spread language and technology. So those Indo-European languages, possible religion, bronze technology, and then you can make those metal things from bronze. And this bronze stuff is really crucial, again, because that is made up of copper and tin. Copper and tin do not occur naturally with one another. That means you have to, if you have the tin, you have to go get copper, vice versa, or you go get both. And so the fact that we see bronze pop up in different areas of the world tells us that we have trade. And so this is kind of what these are, like informal routes, the interior people hanging with the exterior people. And for the most part right now, this is regional, like it's in this spot, that spot, not an interregional trade. And we're talking about, you know, you're going thousands of years ago for this stuff. So what formalizes it is what we refer to as the great second wave of civilizations. I have there on a map, just to the chart, to give you an idea of what we're talking about. The Marians and the Qin and the Zhou and the Romans and the Greeks and Alexander and all sorts of stuff, okay? So this second wave of civilizations really, because they're so big and because they're so sophisticated, they have this need for trade. They also conquer much larger areas, which, again, if you're going to conquer people, you need a good economy, so we need trade. So, for instance, the Persians invade into modern-day Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. They call it Khorasan, but that's Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan. Alexander drives into Central Asia and Bactria, which is Afghanistan and Pakistan. China drives east to take out the Xiongnu, who were the pastoralists out there because they really want horses. And so all these civilizations are driving into each other, and they're going to start to intermingle. Okay, that's one of the big influences of Alexander with Hellenism and stuff like that. So now that these empires are getting larger, they want more goods, they want more stuff, and then they have the ability to get to these places, so the trade routes are going to start to develop, okay? And what is also good is they have goods to trade, they have ideas to spread, but now with a strong centralized state, they sought to make the routes more secure for merchants and travelers, and that's really important. You know, if I'm a merchant, I don't want to go out if I'm not going to make money or if I'm going to, like, die. But if I have the Romans or the Han or the Kushans or the Parthians or all sorts of groups there that are going to try to help make it safe, well, then I might be willing to risk it. And really, by the time we get to, say, 200 BCE, or let's say more like 100 BCE, these exchange routes are really, like, they have formed. And you have two great bookend empires. In the west, you have the Roman Empire, and in the east, you have Han China. Now, it's important to know we have no evidence that anyone from Han China ever got to Rome, or Rome that got to China. But their goods got there. Roman stuff ends up in China. Chinese stuff ends up in Rome because of trade. And so we're going to see this crisscrossing networks specifically on land here. That's where it's going to develop first, guys, and that's important to understand. So the general timeline, now the map that you see on the right, that is a combination of the land and sea lanes. The land lanes are going to be the ones, you know, the thicker lines show major routes, the thinner lines show minor routes, and of course the light blue lines are the sea routes. Now the sea routes are later, so the land lines are first. The first few centuries of the Common Era, they are thriving under Rome and Han China. They then fall out for a little bit, but they will be revived by the Abbasid Caliphates and Tang China. Then they're going to fall apart again around the year 1000 or so, but then they will be reignited probably to their biggest height around the late 12 and early 1300s under the Mongols, okay? Now, animals here are crucial because when you're traveling this much land, like, look, no one wants to walk. There's only so much stuff people can carry. Animals can carry people, but they can also carry stuff, or they can pull wagons with stuff. Note, it's about the stuff. Horses, of course, are the first one. That is the key thing. And up top, you see that is these Central Asian horses. You see they're a bit thicker, which actually allows them to carry more. You'll get the invention of yokes and saddles and stirrups, which I'll actually talk more about during the Mongols because that's kind of their deal, which will help you control horses. Then you will have the domestication of camels, and these are Bactrian camels. Okay, so you see these furry guys because they live, look, there's the snow, as well as oxen that can help, you know, transport large amounts of goods. The sea lanes are going to come a little bit later. They do take longer to establish, but they'll be more important and the center of the most valuable trade that really we will see in the world. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Indian Ocean trade. And still probably the number one trade zone. Yes, the U.S. were important. The Pacific trade is nice. The Atlantic trade is nice. The Indian Ocean trade is where it's all about. Okay, and that's still key today, and it was key back then. So that's going to take a little bit longer, and I'm going to talk about that in a separate video. The other thing is we see the development of cities. Now, I'm not going to read every single one of these. It's good to know a number of these. So you can pause here and take a look at it. But I like to have a map here that kind of shows the cities that develop or that just get like really big during this time. Some of them are more important than others, but these are kind of your like big time cities, and they're super important. And we get increased urbanization. Okay, one of the reasons why you get urbanization, after the Dark Ages in Europe is because of trade, and the cities are absolutely crucial, and it's going to change the way life is, and it's going to start that process. The Silk Road is going to help this concept of, cities existed beforehand, like long, long beforehand, right? The whole idea of quote unquote civilization begins because we start living in cities. But really, it's the Silk Roads that start in the BCE period, and then, of course, really kind of go all the way on to today, that fosters this idea of the importance of an urban society, and eventually puts us to the point today where the bulk of people in the world today live in and around cities as opposed to rural areas. Okay, and here are just some pictures of some of the most famous cities. So we have Palmyra, that's the one that is in modern-day Syria, Kashgar, and then kind of a redrawing of what Chang'an would have looked like, okay? So that's us getting these Silk Roads established, gives you an idea of the timeline, kind of how it worked, and we'll continue on with talking about the goods, talking about sea lanes, talk about in Africa, talking about in other different parts, and I'll see you guys soon, okay? Hope you enjoyed this one.